Hi, welcome to the Conspiracy Cupboard. I'm Mischief. Today we're going to be talking about the Misuse of Drugs Act. That stems from 1920, 1971, right up to today. Let's get into it, people. Cue the title sequence. These title sequences are getting heavy. Yes, I know the goatee fell off. Don't worry, it'll be coming back. It will be coming back. So today we are going to be looking into the Misuse of Drugs Act. That is the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971 in the UK. Now, as you are aware, things like cannabis, cocaine, heroin, magic mushrooms, that are currently still illegal in the UK. Now, I am hoping that we can get to a state where America is and other countries around the world, which I will get into later in the episode, of places where cannabis use especially is legalized for medical use and for recreational use as well, and also where this all stems from. So it originally comes from the 1920s then, or the early 20th century. During World War I, restrictions were placed on the possession of opium, cannabis, and cocaine as part of wartime measures. Although initially temporary, these controls were formalised under the 1920 Dangerous Drugs Act, or DDA, which prohibited the possession and unlicensed import and export of opium, heroin, and cocaine mainly. This stems from the opium wars of the early 1800s or late 1800s with England and China, and then obviously carried on by America. Now, these first drug acts from 1909 in Shanghai, with the commissions held at The Hague between 1911 and 1914, set out new plans for global controls of opium and other drugs, obviously from the opium wars. These, as I said, were led by America mainly, and to some degree an assertion of rising American power in East Asia, where Britain had previously been responsible for the notorious, as I mentioned, opium wars to prevent China restricting opium imports. However, Britain, Germany and other European nations had their own interests in shaping the controls to protect their pharmaceutical industries. Now, around this time, 1920s and earlier, cannabis, opium and stuff were used for medicine, mainly for amputating limbs, or if you needed surgery, or you were experiencing back pain, or many other medical issues. Cannabis was actually issued for you to use freely. Cannabis was open to grow as well for people, and people were commissioned to actually grow hemp out in their gardens, especially during early wartime. So the resulting Hague Convention marked the first international effort to introduce global restrictions on drug supplies. These eventually turned into measures that were later carried out and increased in 1961 under UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. Now, this is where we basically get all our laws from now. Going forward, it was pushed through from the UN. So the UN influenced places like America, like the UK, Germany, France, Spain, all these other countries, part of the UN, and pushed their own drug narrative. Now, it was during the 60s, it was to try and curb the use of marijuana and LSD and hallucinogenic mushrooms and things that were making people free, able to think for themselves, and able to get out of the system that was put around them, which was a great controversy to the powers that be at the time, obviously, because people were living free. They had the notion and the wherewithal to openly use cannabis and hallucinogenics and other drugs. So more restrictions were then put in place. Many arrests were then made in America. This obviously helped with their war efforts during a time when Vietnam started. In the 1950s then, the use of drugs and of alcohol were increasingly associated with new subcultures. News reporting routinely linked these developments to both emerging youth cultures and black communities. As in opium scares in the 1920s, moral panic over drugs use provided cover for racism and thinly veiled attacks on immigration. So, as I said before, it was started from the 50s into the 60s. They were putting more and more restrictions on it, and especially in America, it was to curb use through black communities to obviously instill, like it says, more racism and more easier ways to just arrest someone because they had possession of cannabis or suspected, and you could just use their colour of their skin or their ethnicity or whatever you decided then to do the searches. 1964 then, a new Dangerous Drugs Act ratified the 1961 UN Convention and banned the cultivation of cannabis. The UK government also reconvened a committee which had first reported in 1961 by Lord Bryan. You can't get more bloody British than that. Lord Bryan, to look at the role of medical prescription and influencing levels of heroin use. Its findings led to the Dangerous Drugs Act of 1967, which related the British system of prescribing but required doctors to be licensed by the Home Office, and also set up drug dependency units across England to provide specialist treatment. So this is why I'm doing this as well, because it is a conspiracy. All these were set up because they developed things like penicillin, what we call paracetamol here, aspirin, things like this were being developed. They were easier to source, they were easier to put out, they were creating morphine and opiate substitutes, and they could then market these, mass produce them and sell them. So to restrict the actual drugs that can benefit you, or that can be grown easily or distributed by ourselves and used freely as treatment for us, i.e. cannabis, is beneficial for them, because that way we can't use it. We can only buy the drugs that they provide. But if they wish to, they can grow and cultivate cannabis or mushrooms or anything that they want, as long as it's licensed by the Home Secretary and through the Home Office, and they're registered as pharmacists, basically. So this carried on, obviously, and with music scenes and everything else, it got worse and worse with the prohibitions on LSD and cannabis. In 1967, responding to the increased call for a rethink, the government set up a committee chaired by Lady Wootton to review the laws on cannabis and LSD. The report was published in late 1968, and while it didn't call for legislation, it called for cannabis to be treated differently. The report further amplified political debate around drug policy. So by the late 60s then, there were growing pressure from within the establishment for drug policy to be consolidated, partly in reaction to media reporting and partly because of recent changes in drug cultures. As I said, because of the music industry, the way people were writing, films, expression, they came under pressure basically to stop all this and regain what they wanted to be as some kind of power and control. So in 1979, a new bill was introduced by the Labour Home Secretary, James Gallagher, who had been personally sceptical of Woollerton. It was on the basis that the Misuse of Drugs Act, or MDA, was developed. The MDA's path through Parliament was in the end somewhat convoluted, having been introduced by a Labour administration. It was dropped and reintroduced by the Conservative Home Secretary, Reginald Moulding. Of course, it would be Conservative, wouldn't it, that put this back into place and, wanted to control everyone's minds, as usual. So the debate that accompanied then its passage showed, in Parliament at least, there was broad support for tightening drug laws. There were some notable expectations, including an early recognition that drug-led police searches could lead to antagonism and discrimination, were mainly swept off, and the wild claims regarding the risk of disuse of physical and mental health and a desire to be seen as doing something to protect establishment social norms all added to its support. So, unfortunately, the bill was approved in May 1971 and received royal assent on the 27th of that month, although it took a further 2 years to be fully implemented. The law passed in that environment became the foundation for all drug policy following the next 50 years. Now, this is my point. It hasn't been changed in over 50 years at all. It still has the same classifications for drugs, and some drugs are then moved up. So I'll go through some of the drugs that are in the classifications for you then, and the consequences of carrying them. So classifications are A, B, and C. So Class A drugs are ecstasy, LSD, speed when in liquid form prepared for injection, heroin, cocaine, crack, methadone, and magic mushrooms. How the hell magic mushrooms are Class A drugs? I don't understand. I mean, if you've seen one of my previous videos, I've done a video on DMT and the studies at the the Imperial College in London, where they study LSD, magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, DMT, basically. And the effects on depression and PTSD and anxiety, and have proven that these help. They are not harmful drugs. So the consequences of these Class A drugs then, possession is up to 7 years imprisonment for an unlimited fine or both. Supply, production, you can get up to life imprisonment or an unlimited fine or both. I mean, these penalties are insane. Insane. You can murder someone and be out in 15 years or less. But you're telling me you could get life imprisonment for having magic mushrooms or LSD? I mean, I know people's opinion on heroin and cocaine, but if these drugs are actually used in the right circumstances, they aren't harmful. I'm not promoting heroin, but magic mushrooms, sorry. So Class B drugs then are cannabis, spice, which obviously is the illegal made up version of cannabis, speed in powder form, methadone and ketamine. Now, like I said, if you're a pharmacist, you can get LSD, you can get ketamine, you can do studies with ketamine and LSD, you can get magic mushrooms, you can get cannabis, you can get whatever you want, basically, if you're a pharmacist and you are in ties with the government and you go, hey guys, we'd like some cat, please. Oh yeah, how much do you want, lads? Oh, we've confiscated all this, luckily. So the consequences of Class B drugs then are up to 5 years imprisonment with an unlimited fine or both. Supply and production are up to 14 years imprisonment with an unlimited fine or both. Class C drugs then, and this is not all of them, this is just a couple of them. Valium, GBH, growth hormones, steroids. Consequences of up to 2 years imprisonment, an unlimited fine or both, or 14 years imprisonment for supply production. So obviously they do carry different lengths of imprisonment or fines, but really when you look at these drugs, it's one of those where if we were allowed to use these drugs freely and you actually learned about these, the only thing that I can see is a benefit to society where we can actually manage the intake of whatever we do and free our own minds and use our own thoughts and expression to interpret the world around us, whether that's using magic mushrooms, cannabis or whatever. And obviously if it's being bought from a shop and it's being taxed, then what is your problem, government? You're going to get billions of pounds back. I mean, billions. If you started this tomorrow, literally I'd go and open a shop, man. This would be the first thing I did. You know, I've got an app set up already, in an idea for it to get it going for cannabis use and magic mushrooms. You could set up actual safe spaces where people can go and have proper shamanistic experiences and religious, because that's what you're holding back. You're holding back people's religion, whether you think this or not. If you smoke cannabis or you take magic mushrooms, you are spiritual. You have a spiritual element to you, and that, if you want to put it down to anything, is discrimination. In this day and age, do you really want to be discriminating against more people? Really? And imprisoning people for smoking cannabis or growing cannabis or magic bloody mushrooms which grow out of the fucking ground. I could go into some woods now and go and find magic mushrooms. Because guess what? They grow out of the ground, and you're making something that grows out of the ground that we can eat if we really want to, because it ain't up to you to tell us or whether we can or can't do this, especially when something grows, let me say this again, grows out of the ground, that all you have to do is dry it to prepare it and then stick it in some tea or eat it. Who are you to tell us to do that? Really? Don't you think these drug laws should be actually looked at and chucked away? The amount of people in prison that hold up our system that we have to pay for, that have done nothing, really, in the grand scheme of things, when you've got people out there like Rishi Sunak, you've got Tony Blair, you've got Vladimir bloody Putin, you've got evil people all over the world, and you're sticking someone in prison because they've had a magic mushroom. I mean, this is what blows my mind about this, and this is why I've had to do this, because it is a full conspiracy. Like I say, if you're a pharmacist, you can pretty much get whatever you want. And if you're paying the government, you can get anything. Absolutely anything. As long as you give them the old wodge of money there, they'll do whatever you want. But if you're a normal citizen, you have to abide by this crap that was made up, and it all came through wars and then their own greed, because they've made this pharmaceutical mass companies, you know, like Big Pharma, like Pfizer, like all these people who come along and basically corner a market and then go in with the government, give them loads of money, get loads of money back, and make things like these drug laws so that we can't use natural available drugs. So, as I've mentioned before, I do actually have a petition going. It's not live at the moment. I need some more people to sign up to it, basically. So if you can email me at the email address above, I will send you the information back for the petition to legalise cannabis and magic mushrooms, decriminalise them, get them in this country for people to bloody use, because it is not up to some idiot in a suit who I didn't elect and I don't want leading us to tell me or you what we can put in our bodies or how we should use our minds. Now, as I've suggested in my petition, I think it should be from the age of 21, where you can use things like cannabis, magic mushrooms, alcohol especially, because alcohol is 10 million times more dangerous than cannabis or magic mushrooms. So is tobacco. So 21, you know, and actually put the money back into education. Get kids out farming and growing and learning about stuff, and learning about drugs and the effects of drugs and everything, you know, and then money and how to work, and actually educate them up to that age. And then if you decide then that you want to have a joint, or you want to have a drink, or you want to have this, you'll have an informed decision, because guess what? You'll have been taught about it. I mean, for God's sake, there are tribes out in the Amazon right now that give ayahuasca to their infants because they believe that these drugs actually give us a connection to our spiritual selves, to the other realm, other dimensions that we are part of and exist in. And by taking this away from us, that is what you are taking away. You are taking away our connection to the other side, to a spiritual realm, to something that we belong to and have always belonged to. and that is not your right. So if you'd like to see a difference, then please send me a link above. I will send you a link to the petition. So there are websites you can go and look at, like transformlaw.co.uk, where they have loads of stuff on legalizing drugs, basically, and getting these laws changed. Like I say, the drug laws haven't changed for 50 years. The only thing that changed every now and again is they put a classification or drop something up and down. I mean, cannabis was class C, then it went back to class B. Magic mushrooms weren't even legal, and then, oh look, suddenly they were class A. Why? Because they opened their mind? Does that scare you, does it? It bloody should do. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone that's subscribed at the moment. There's 60 of you. I can't believe it. I've got a couple of videos coming for a couple of subscribers. We've got at Television Authentic, who have requested a video from me, so I'm going to look into that. And it's a wrestling video. It's about Owen Hart and a possible conspiracy around his death, which I'm going to have a little look into and see what we can find. We've got Mr. Wilson7204, who I did the video for the other day about the 50-foot snake, Remy Van Leerde, who saw the giant snake in the Congo. So if you'd like to go and check out those videos, one of them's upcoming, obviously, the one about Owen Hart. I'm going to have a look into that, see if there's a conspiracy we could find about his death. And I'd just like to give a little plea out to Owen's wife, from the end of this episode, to please let him go in the Hall of Fame. I understand your animosity towards the WWE over his passing, but as a wrestling fan, it's where he belongs, and it would be a big FU to Vince to stick him in the Hall of Fame, because that would remind him of what happened and the fuck up that happened. So please. So yeah, I've also got upcoming episodes on more UFO sightings in the UK. We've got the Gudum Padang, Gobekli Tepe videos and things that I'll be linking in, Kahan Tepe, things like that. Some of the other alternate views that you should be looking at from archaeologists who say this is all bullshit, or are actually backing up basically the Koran Tepe sites and things that are now being found, and possible links to farming and agriculture over 14,000 years old. And like I say, I've got a couple more episodes about linguistics and things coming up. I'm just trying to organise the time with my expert there to actually link up when we get a chance, because unfortunately we both have to work, and yeah, filming stuff's quite difficult, so bear with me on that. But yeah, plenty more episodes to come. Thank you very much for subscribing. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it's given you a bit more insight into where drug laws come from, especially in the UK. And hopefully, let's see if we can get this changed, you know, in a rational way, and not just people saying, oh, that's this or whatever, and, you know, coming up with rubbish about drugs, but actually sitting down and saying, yes, let's change this altogether. Let's use these. I mean, the rest of the world's doing it, you know. America's doing it state by state. I think we should do that in the UK. Shire by shire, yeah? The independent state of Yorkshire declares that cannabis and magic mushrooms are legal, and the independent state of Derbyshire also declares that magic mushrooms and cannabis are legal. Oh, and the independent state of Lancashire, and oh man, yeah. We could so easily do that. Turn round to our government and go, fuck you, it's our minds, it's our bodies, we'll do what we fucking please with them. So, from Mischief, fight the fucking power, baby. Here we go. Have a great weekend, people, and I shall see you in the next one. See you later. Hi, welcome to this. Put my teeth back in.